Good morning, all. Before we get started, I note that Ron LaBelle will not join us. However, we do have a quorum. Yes, I see Mr. Alves. All right. Good morning. My name is Robert Almy. I'm the chair of the Town of Dartmouth Public Works Board. This is our meeting of March 28th, 2024. I'd like to have a roll call to open the meeting. Mr. Alves?
Yep.
Chairman is present. Welcome to you all. I notice we have two members of the select board this morning. Thank you for attending. First order of business is to approve and accept warrants. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve and accept the warrants for the bills payable period ending March 4th, 11th, and the 18th of 2024.
Right, motion by Mr. Alves. Chair seconds that motion. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. Second item is to approve and accept payrolls.
Make a motion to approve and accept the payrolls for the week ending February 24th, March 2nd, 9th, 16th, and the 23rd of 2024.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item is to approve and accept meeting minutes for February 29th.
Make a motion to approve and accept the meeting minutes from February 29th, 2024.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Minutes are approved. Now, we've got a couple of board members, select board members with us. Out of courtesy, I'd like to ask if they're here for a specific item and offer to take that item out of board. Ms. Brooks, do you have something here you're especially interested in?
I was interested in the rates,
All right, so that's
the discussion of rates.
new item A.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mickelson?
Same here.
All right. Do I have a representative from Andrade Excavation here?
Great excavation.
We've got a utility layer application. Do we have a representative from that company?
I don't believe so.
All right. All right. Well, in deference to the select board members, I'd like to take new business item A out of order. Do I have a motion? Mr. Alves?
I'll make a motion to take new business item A out of order.
Mr. Alves has moved to take that item out of order. Chair seconds the motion. Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, let's take item A. I believe we've got we have representatives from Weston and Sampson with us as well. Tim, how would you like to proceed on this?
So we have Margaret McCarthy, Ben Rollins, and Stephanie Collins, all from Weston and Sampson today, and Matt Abraham from the Abraham Group, presenting the rate study that we've been working on over the past few months. And they have some different graphs and charts and recommendations of moving forward with water and sewer rates for the next 5 years based on our capital expenditures that we plan to expend in the next few years as well.
Right. To be clear, we are not setting rates. We're simply going to discuss options. And we asked for this study in the context of evaluating both necessary water supply projects in order to keep up with town demand and emerging regulations, and a need to consider upgrading and or replacing the current wastewater treatment facility. Who would like to lead? Ms. McCarthy, would you like to lead the presentation, or Mr. Rollins?
I'll take this on, Rob. It's great to see you. And Tim and Rob, thank you guys both for the introduction. And you kind of stole my thunder there for quite a lot of what I was going to say, but that's okay. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us. Just real quick to add on to both what Rob and Tim was saying, this is phase one of a phase two project here for the rate study. So right now we are focusing on water and sewer, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay with you, Rob.
Yeah, please do.
Here. How'd that work, everyone?
Great.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Start that slideshow. The laser pointer up if needed. So this is phase one of a two-phase project, like I was saying. So we have water and sewer first. We felt that this was kind of the higher priority need. And then later on, we'll be discussing or working through the second phase of the project, which is going to be dealing with the administration, engineering, highway, snow and ice, solid waste, recycling and transfer station, and then fleet management as well. So our objectives here are kind of two-pronged. So we want to make sure, like Rob was saying, we want to make sure that we have enough money, the town has enough money through these rate increases for it to be able to fund its capital plans for both water and sewer. And also, we also want to make sure that the retained earnings hit their goal of around 15%. So we're targeting 15%. So one thing I do want to mention is that Weston and Sampson, together with the town of Dartmouth, and specifically Steve Sullivan and Tim Barber, we completed a water system evaluation a little over a year ago in December of 2022, I believe. And a portion of it was to create a capital improvements plan so that the town can identify the projects needed to bolster its system. And more importantly, in this last bullet on the slide here, we found that through water quality analysis during the water system evaluation, that the water quality coming from New Bedford feeding Dartmouth was relatively worse than Dartmouth's sources itself. Specifically with some of the more recent issues that Dartmouth has been having with total trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids, both of which have MCLs, max contaminant levels of 80 and 60 parts per billion respectively. And water from New Bedford was actually coming in close to those MCLs already to the Dartmouth water system. So that paired with the recent somewhat skyrocketing costs from New Bedford outlined the need to reduce our reliance on New Bedford water. So I think one final thing I'd like to say is the town hasn't made a huge splash in capital improvements in recent history, and investments are needed in its infrastructure, and keeping control of your infrastructure and not subbing it out is generally cheaper, a lot cheaper in the long run, as opposed to, getting all water from New Bedford or having somebody else come in and run the water system a different way. And this final slide here that I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to knock it to Matt Abrahams. This is just a real quick glimpse of Dartmouth's brother and sister communities in the area, and similarly sized. We have typical water bills on the left-hand side, and I'll talk about the water bill here first. So Dartmouth is this darker blue colored bar here, third from the left, at around $250, compared to you're around 400 on the higher end is what their comparable public water suppliers are shooting for right now. And then also Dartmouth on the right-hand side over here for your sewer bill. Second to the left, so second cheapest in this grouping here, as compared to $400 to $500 at $252. So relatively, the water and sewer bills are cheap in Dartmouth, and improvements need to be made. Rate increases need to happen to be able to allow the town to have money they need to make their capital improvements plans happen and increase their retained earnings. So with that, I'll kick it over to Mr. Matt.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Abrahams with the Abrahams Group. I just want to confirm everyone can hear me okay.
Gotcha, Matt.
All right, thank you, Ben. Yes, so we're going to talk about water and water rates first. So this slide is a little bit of background, what's happened recently. It's more of a refresher for everyone. Recent rate action for water in FY23 rates were increased by 4% across the board. FY24 rates were increased by 5% across the board, and also the usage tied to the minimum was decreased. So that meant that users would get into the higher tiers a little bit more quickly for that reason. Some comments on expenses. The town pays New Bedford for some of its water, and there have been high costs and high usage years recently, specifically $1.8 million last fiscal year of FY23, and lower costs and lower usage years. And a recent example is $1.2 million in FY22. The town currently budgets this expense at $1.4 million for the current fiscal year of FY24 and for the upcoming fiscal year of FY25, despite an 8.5% increase. That 8.5% increase is, I believe, for the upcoming fiscal year of FY25. Debt service, this is debt currently on the books for water. The FY24 debt service amount is $846,000, and the expected amount for FY25 is $1.03 million. And existing debt will slowly come off the books, but there is the potential with the capital plan and the funding related to that, that the town will take on new debt in the near future. For capital, just a quick review and looking forward as well. As Ben mentioned, there hasn't been much capital spent recently. There was none funded for FY24 on the water side, I think on the sewer side as well. And we did take a look at the capital plan as it currently exists and looked at some of the totals related to that. We're looking at a capital plan for FY25 through FY29, which is a 5-year look. And if the plan were to be fully funded, that would be a hit on retained earnings of $1.1 million. That would be just for items funded out of retained earnings. And also additional debt of about $14.6 million, which has an annual impact of about, it's really $1.3 million. I re-looked at the numbers. That 1.4 includes the cellular conversion project, which is now part of the existing debt line. So that number got knocked down a little bit to 1.3. We just didn't update the slide for that. So once all of that debt would be once all that debt would be on the books, you're looking at about $1.3 million additional on top of what the town already has on its books. Next slide, please. Some recent results, looking back just a little bit. We're also including what we have as projections for FY24 in these two graphs. The left-hand side shows recent financial results for water. There's a zero line that's kind of in the middle there, where you see that the bottom of some of the bar graphs and also the top of some of the bar graphs where they equal. That's the $0 line. So that gives you a sense of what's positive and what's negative. So this look starts with FY19 and goes forward 5 years, recent pass all the way through 23, and the rightmost column is the 24 projection. So you can see that water had positive results in FY19 and FY21, which was the COVID year, and negative results in 20, 22, and 23. We're projecting a surplus in FY24. These results, for the most part, follow recent weather patterns. If we were to think about dry summers, wet summers, and the impact that would have on outdoor water usage and ultimately on the bottom line, the COVID year was really dry. FY20 and FY22 were really wet years. And where it doesn't follow is FY23. I would have expected that bar to be a little bit higher because that was coming off of a very dry summer. If we think back 2 summers ago, it was very dry. But I think that there's a slight delay in some of the money coming in, and that's why 24 is positive. So that looks okay to me. On the right-hand side are the retained earnings results. The blue line shows your actual results and also a projection for FY24 in the rightmost area. And the red line is the target that Ben mentioned, which is 15%. What that 15% represents is 15% of total fund expenditures in that year. That's why that line is not consistent. It increases going forward because the fund expenses have increased in those years going forward. Slide then. So now we're going to start looking forward at some of our projections starting with the next fiscal year, FY25, which would be the year that the board would set rates for. But we have provided for you in our analysis a 5-year look. And I also just want everyone to be aware that there are Excel workbooks that contain all the information that we're looking at right now, a lot of detail in there, and those can be shared with anyone who's interested in looking at them. We're presenting a high-level representation of the work that we've done in those workbooks today. So this is the do nothing for water. And what we say with do nothing means if you were not to change revenues at all, and if you were not to do any capital work, this is what we think the projections would look like over the next 5 years. And we've presented a graph that is similar to what we were showing on the prior slide, which is retained earnings and also comparing it to the target. And you can see that the retained earnings projections fall off pretty quick and go well below the target without any action. And what this is also telling us is that we believe there are enough retained earnings to get the fund through the next fiscal year of FY25, but not beyond that. So now we can start to look at some rate options. So this is a very similar slide to what we were just looking at a moment ago, just with the change in this case being that we've changed the revenue projections, and that's tied to rate increases. What we're showing here is an annual increase of 4.25% for water rates and the resulting financial numbers and graph related to that. But one thing that should be pointed out for sure is that this graph also assumes, this slide also assumes no capital work. So this would be the funding of no capital. Our projections are showing that the town would need about a 4.25% annual increase over the next 5 years just to maintain the status quo of the operating budget without additional capital. So this next option that we're presenting for you, a very similar slide, but just with some updated numbers. What we've done here is we've started mixing in some capital. And we didn't necessarily, even though we have the ability to do that in the workbook, we didn't necessarily start pointing at different projects and including them or not including them. We instead just focused on some pretty round numbers and just wanted to understand what the impact would be based on those round numbers. So what I mean by that is, for this slide, for this option, we decided to focus on the funding of 500 of capital via $500,000 in retained earnings over the next 5 years, and also an additional borrowing amount of $3.1 million over the next 5 years. So in total, that would fund about $3.6 million of the capital plan. And you'll recall a few slides ago that the capital plan had items, total expenses in there much higher than that. And we will show you an all capital slide momentarily once we get to that. So this slide basically just represents what it would look like if the town were to start investing in capital, but not cover the whole plan and actually not even cover half of the plan. And it's showing a 5.5% annual increase. And if you look at the retained earnings projections, the blue is still trending below the target. It's generally below the target, but by the end of the 5-year look, it starts to trend back towards the target. And in my mind, that's okay because you're bringing in additional revenue at that point. Similar slide here. Now we're just introducing more capital. So now we're up to $840,000 in total retained earnings over the 5-year period, and $6.6 million in total borrowing. So that's a total amount of just over $7 million. I think that's about half-ish, I think, of what's in the capital plan. And we're looking at an annual increase of 6.75% under this scenario. And you can see that our projections are showing that actually retained earnings would be above the target at the end of the 5-year look. with this option. And here's the all capital scenario. So the bullet points on the left show you the total funding. If the town were to authorize all the capital that's currently in the capital plan over the next 5 years, $1.1 million total retained earnings, $14.6 million additional borrowing, and that's an annual increase of about 8.75% on the water side. So those slides, those 4 different options for you, kind of progression from a no capital scenario to some capital to more capital and eventually to all capital, to kind of build the options in that way. We showed you what we thought the rate increases would be. We showed you what we thought the financial results would be. We showed you what we thought the projected retained earnings would be related to those options. This slide shows you what we think the projected water bills would be for the average residential, well, I should say for a few sample users that we've included, because each of the tables is the same here, but we've been focusing on the third row in each of these tables, which is the average residential family, which uses 5,600 cubic feet per bill. So that's a semi-annual bill. So just to be clear, these are per bill amounts in these tables. So the blue boxes show what the current bill is for that family, about $277 every 6 months. And as you go left to right of there, you can see what the projected updated bills are based on each of the options that are presented. So option 1's in the top, 2, 3, 4, as you go downward. So increase would be the per bill amount over the 5-year period. For option 1, it'd be $64 per bill over the 5-year period. For option 2, it would be $85. For option 3, it would be $107. And for option 4, it would be $144. Now that's over the 5-year period. If we were to focus on just the next fiscal year, if the town were to approve the rates that we're focused on here with these options, just for the next fiscal year, for option 1, it's about a $12 increase per bill. Option 2 is about a $15 increase per bill. Option 3 is about a $24 increase per bill. So then I think these are all the water slides before we transition to sewer. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Maybe we can
Yep.
maybe we just pause momentarily to see if there are any questions or comments on the water slides before we move on to sewer.
I think that's a good idea. If you don't mind, Matt, I just want to make one comment. You had a question on the FY23, why those were so low compared to, I think it was a relatively wet year. I do just want to make a note that 579 Old Westport Road water treatment plant was offline for the majority of that year. And the town was basically forced to buy more water from New Bedford. Tim and Steve, correct me on actual numbers here, but I think you had allotted $600,000 for that year. And we actually spent around 1.4 million. So those are just off the top of my head. And I don't recall if those are true numbers, but main point is Dartmouth had to spend a lot more money on water coming from New Bedford.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you all. And I think that's a good idea. Matt, any questions out there for us at the moment?
I just have one question. The 15%, is that the normal range for retained earnings that you're shooting for? That the town of Dartmouth has, or what was it in the past? Has it been 15%?
In terms of what
Or
the
is this
target is,
other towns doing 15% retained earnings?
I'll let Tim comment if he knows
It's always been
target
kind of a
the town
target,
has.
a goal to keep our retained earnings around 15%. Yeah.
And that's
And
generally what we see in other communities. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
It seems to me that as the capital expenditures go up, the retained earnings go up. Is that typical as well?
I mean, if we're looking at the different, what's projected on these slides, the retained earnings?
Yes. For example, if we have if we finance a significant project, say for 30 years, and we're paying principal and interest on that, does the 15% target include those payments of principal and interest?
Yes, so what we've done here is so for this slide, for example, I'll just talk about this slide because we projected expenses for all of the capital
Right.
plan. So we would project debt tied to the different capital projects. And then we would work on what we thought the rate increases would need to be in order to cover those expenses, but also in order to maintain the retained earnings target at 15%. So it was twofold. What are the rates need to be in order to cover your expenses and also to maintain the target? So I wouldn't necessarily say that the retained earnings increase. It was more just that we wanted to make sure that we're maintaining a certain retained earnings balance and we set rates accordingly. Hopefully that makes sense.
I just have one additional question. Where do we stand with capital improvements with these projects if we were to, depend upon what option the town chooses? Can somebody enlighten us on that where, has anything been submitted to the authorities for the improvements in town?
Yeah, I presented my first presentation to Capital, and I also presented my Capital to Finance Committee, and I should be getting my second round of presentations up shortly.
So what's the feedback on that?
There were questions. There was a lot of positive feedback on the projects that we presented for our capital. But we have to we prioritize and emphasize our priorities this year to ensure that prioritized projects do get funded.
So what happens if we grant X interest here, depending upon what option you go with, and capital improvements denies the situation? The retained earning, everything goes up?
So if capital doesn't get funded,
Yep.
and you increase the rates, then that money's not getting expended out of your retained earnings, so you're actually building a higher percentage of retained earnings.
For your next foreseen project, is that true?
Correct.
With the exception of, we see that the New Bedford rates continued to increase, and that wasn't necessarily projected. So I think it was an 8.25% to 8.5%
Yes.
increase, Tim.
Yep.
And so therefore you could see that would potentially have a big impact. So not vesting in the capital improvement projects is likely going to continue mean increased costs on buying water.
Thank you, Margaret.
I have a question before we move on, and it's regarding the borrowing. So on each slide that showed us a percentage rate hike, there was also a larger figure for borrowing. So I'm curious what your top 3 CIP objectives are, funded projects that would align with this borrowing.
So that we will look at, based on, the presentation and what we think we should go with for the capital expenditures based on the rate increase that's being presented. So we'll have to prioritize that funding based on that.
I totally understand that, but having toured the facility, I don't see that some of these are options. I think we have some critical infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. So
So this is the water.
Hang on. I think there may be a misunderstanding here. So what we've just looked at is water supply.
Water, yeah.
Right,
And Tim, if I recall, projects such as
The logs.
upgrading the I'm forgetting the name of
The
the
579 Westboro Road.
579 plant, yep, and there's another large capital expenditure for the cell phone system.
Yes.
Is that right?
So that's already borrowed, so that was borrowed for this year.
Okay,
And then the 579 Westport Road project, we're working with Weston and Sampson to finalize, to work on that design and get it to a point where we can advertise for bid, and we're looking at funding that through ARPA funding.
and that would allow us to reduce the need for capital projects in the future, is that right? If it's ARPA funded, I mean, in terms of the town paying for it.
Correct.
All right. Do you have any other large projects that are in that 14.6 million for water supply that you could give us an idea of what you're thinking?
We do. So we have the other water treatment facility upgrades as well. And as Weston and Sampson had forecasted that as a 5-year capital plan. It's definitely aggressive, and that might be a 10-year capital plan for these large upgrades. By the time you design and then advertise and construct each one, it puts it out a bit.
So
Yeah,
Ms. Brooks, the screen now shows a list of the potential projects. If sometimes these spreadsheets are really hard to digest quickly. I think that if you're interested, we'd be happy to sit down and go through these in more detail and explain
Yes.
what
Well,
they are and why they're a high priority.
right. Thank you. Well, yes, I'd like to know the high priority because when I'm looking at a $14 million borrowing and then
Mhm.
looking at a slide that doesn't come close to that, I just want more information.
Got it? Yes.
So we can do that offline. Thanks,
Okay.
Rob.
Absolutely.
I'm curious
was-
in the sewer.
Yeah, we'll get to the sewer in just a minute. That's
Okay.
That was a really great question, and is going to be a great question to kind of discuss this through. I'm getting feedback here.
That's better.
There we go.
Yep.
Great question. And this is kind of what we prepared for the town, what we worked with the town on during our water system evaluation here. I'm showing our capital improvements prioritization table here. And you can see that we have a $3.5 million price tag for the Clearwell and backwash supply storage tank. And that's what we're working with Tim on and Steve on submitting this project to be funded by ARPA. And then you can see year 2, we recommend improvements at the 687 Chase Road water treatment plant. And in year 3, we have some raw water main improvements and then similar improvements to the water treatment plant at 299 Chase Road in year 4. So I think that's a great question, Ms. Brooks, is what it's the discussion that needs to happen internally on what projects are important, what are needed, what are desired, and what you guys want to carry in your rate increases.
Yeah, and just to note too, it's not just capital, because if you add the operating improvements as well, the grand total there for the 5 years is about $20 million.
Thanks, Margaret. Great question.
All right. So Tim, as an aside, could you set up a discussion with Selectwoman Brooks, and if there seems to be broader interest, we may want to take some of this information to the capital planning committee.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I have copies of the full presentation as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Excuse me, Stan Mickelson. So can you send that to myself and Heidi, this presentation?
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
I just have one other one. Just PFAS on your slideshow, on your previous slide that you had. You didn't have much projection on the cost of PFAS evaluation. I'm assuming that we meet the criteria through EPA on PFAS. Is that true or not?
What criteria is that?
Just to meet the contaminant level.
Oh, I got you. So yeah, EPA is still they're still working through the proper channels on getting a finalized MCL, and actually just got recently somewhat pushed off indefinitely. This is a very hot topic button. I'll tell you this 0.05 million, that's a $50,000 evaluation of the town's system to be able to remove PFAS according to the EPA, the new EPA MCLs when they do drop. So that is just a simple placeholder to be able to do the evaluation. I'll let Tim and Steve jump in on the actual PFAS levels, maybe a quick discussion on recent levels, but they're low. EPA's proposed MCL for PFOA, PFOA, and PFOS, PFOS, was 4 parts per trillion. I don't know if that's still the case right now, and we're going to have to kind of wait until they drop the actual MCL to move forward. But Tim and Steve, do you want to add to PFAS concentrations at all, or?
We don't have to at the moment. I mean, I'm sure you guys are looking at this in the future as well, because those numbers will impact this, I'm assuming, correct?
Definitely. Yep.
Very good.
Just one comment. All our numbers are below 10 right now, so I'm doing my report right now, and I haven't seen any numbers above 7. So
Thanks, Steve.
And there is, you know, amongst the people who sit on the committees and whatnot, some discussion that EPA may be looking to go from 4 to 10 in their final regulation, which is one of the reasons why it's gotten pushed off. So Dartmouth appears to be, at least in the short term, in relatively good standings with what is anticipated for regulation. And
Great
important,
question.
and important to note, in compliance with all current regulations.
Great question. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? Gary Guerrero's on, and finance director. He doesn't have audio, but he did state that Capital will meet again on April 4th to discuss the capital plans.
All right, any other questions on the water system rates? All right, if there are none, let's move on to wastewater treatment.
Okay, so we have a similar set of slides for you for wastewater treatment or for sewer. The background on sewer, recent rate action, FY23 rates were increased by 9%, FY24 by 5%. The debt service numbers that are currently on the books, 1.02 million FY23, 1.03 million totally, but as we discussed with water, additional debt may go on based on the funding of the capital plan. No capital was funded for FY24. The town maintains a robust capital plan. We saw that on water. The same is true for sewer. How much of it should be funded? If it was fully funded, we have the total impact over the next 5 years of $992,000 out of retained earnings and an additional borrowing amount of $3.1 million, which works out to be about $280,000 annually once all the debt is on the books. And an important point here related to the sewer capital plan, the treatment plant requires upgrade and is not currently fully captured in the capital plan. So presumably the capital plan will grow in the near future to account for that as well. Next slide, please. Recent results on the sewer side. On the left-hand side of the recent results, we 24 is a projected number. So 15 and 21 saw sizable deficits. 20 saw a small surplus, and 22 and 23 saw small deficits were projected for FY24. For the FY21 year, we did take a little bit of a deeper dive on that just to make sure that that number made sense, and we think that it does. There was overall a small operating deficit, I'm sorry, of about $200,000 in FY21. That may have been tied to the pandemic and all the larger properties, especially on the commercial side, thinking about the university. But in addition to that, there were some capital expenses that year that were different than the other years. We saw a $700,000 transfer to capital projects, and also in the funding of a capital article of almost $800,000. So together, that's $1.5 million. And we did include the funding of those capital items as part of the analysis here. But on the operating side, there wasn't nearly that large of a deficit in 21. I just wanted everyone to be aware there. On the right-hand side, the retained earnings, recent results. Also, 24 is projected. You can see, just like with water, that the actual retained earnings certification number, which is the blue line, started above the target and then went below and has remained below since it went below in the FY21 timeframe. Next slide, please. Here's the do nothing. You see a similar trend in the graph as we did with water. Just as a reminder, the do nothing would be no changes to revenues and no additional expenses tied to the capital plan. And just like with water, we think retained earnings could cover the fund through FY25, but not beyond that. Option 1, we have similar options for you as we do with water. Just one fewer than we have with water. So option 1 is the no capital. So it's the same scenario as what we just presented with the baseline, but we have now brought in additional revenue tied to rate increases. So we again went with the same level plan approach for the 5-year look, and we think 3.25% annually per sewer would cover your operating expenses for the next 5 years and keep retained earnings around the targeted 15% that we're looking for. So again, this is without any additional capital. Option 2, we're starting to mix in some capital. So I think we took the approach of maybe going for about half of the capital plan with this slide. We've included $500,000 in retained earnings funding and an additional borrowing amount of $2.2 million in this run. And it results in about a 4% annually increase, 4% annual rate increase for the next 5 years. And we have the retained earnings projections below the target, but trending towards the target at the end of the 5-year look with this option. And the all capital scenario is this. This would be funding all of the capital that's currently in the capital plan. And just as a reminder, as we talked about a few moments ago, this does not include some of the presumed upgrades at the treatment plant. So this is everything else that's in the capital plan. The total amount to be funded is about $1 million in retained earnings and $3.1 million in additional borrowing. And the rate increases resulting to try and get the retained earnings back to the target is 5% per year. And I just want to comment quickly that we see that the blue dips pretty far below the target for 2 years there. That's mostly because the retained earnings funding of $1 million is currently in the first 2 years of the capital plan. So we have that basically that money's coming right out of retained earnings, and that dips it down pretty low. If retained earnings, if those items were more towards the back of the plan, we would see a little bit of a different graph here. I just wanted to explain why it dips down so quickly and then works its way back up. And that's because of about $500,000 in retained earnings funding in year 1, FY25, and also in year 2, FY20. And this may be the last slide we have for you as part of this presentation. Similar slide for water, where we're showing the per bill impact for the user group that we've assembled in these tables. And again, we're focused on the average residential family in the 3rd row down. These are per bill amounts. The average residential family pays $262 per bill today. And at the end of the 5-year look, based on these increases, we have the average residential family's bill going up $45, option 1 with a 3.25% annual increase. We have it going up $56 per bill. Total over the 5-year look with a 4% annual increase, and $72 with a 5% annual increase. And if we just do the 1-year look like I did with water for option 1, it's about an $8 per bill increase. For option 2, it's about a $10 per bill increase. And for option 3, it's about a $13 per bill increase. And Ben, I'll throw it back over to you.
Hey, thanks, Matt. So I think one thing to note, these rate increases, these do assume no major increase and decrease in development, and are kind of based on the average water usage. So if there were some developments new that came into the town, that would skew the results. And if there were some industries that also left town, that would also skew the results as well. But next steps here, guys, we're almost done with our presentation. We just wanted to, the question that Ms. Brooks asked before, that's a great question to kind of keep the conversation rolling here. We want to fine tune our options based on feedback from the town. So we kind of laid some options out for you guys and want to hear back from you. Hopefully, I heard there was an April 4th meeting to discuss the capital plans. And then I think the next Board of Public Works meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, the 18th of April. It might behoove us all to schedule another presentation next month to keep this conversation going ahead of changing the water and sewer rates for next fiscal year.
So let me just say, after that April 4th, well, at that April 4th meeting, they will decide if they want to have DPW back to present. So that's their own meeting. So there might be another date, maybe a couple weeks past that.
I have a request, I guess. We have an obvious need to deal with either an upgrade or replacement of the existing wastewater treatment facility and possibly some of the collection system. And we've been throwing around a capital number for the wastewater treatment facility of something on the order of $10 to $12 per gallon in the million. Tim, were we talking about how many million gallons we needed?
Well,
right
now we're at 4.2.
Okay.
Million gallons per day. So we need an increase above that.
Yeah. So if we assume, say, a 20% increase in capacity, and those numbers, can we make another evaluation that includes a very large, say 50 million or more addition to where we have to fund the thing in, I don't know, Tim, 3 years, and we base on the analysis on using the revolving fund?
So currently, or I'll say we're working on the interim upgrade here at the plant, which is an aeration upgrade with reducing nitrogen, and that upgrade will give us some breathing room to be able to work on the design, advertise, and get a major upgrade in the works. So I'd say the interim upgrade, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years is completed. But the major upgrade, you're probably looking at, closer to 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I'd like to set a fairly aggressive date on that for a number of reasons, including to push the planning on it along. simply because if for no other reason than the facility itself is old and does need significant work. And I think it's better to push that evaluation along hard than to simply say, well, if we upgrade the aeration, we'll buy ourselves 10 years. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Right, and that's why it's a priority, to fund the evaluation in our
Right.
capital. Yep.
But I think the corollary here is that if right now we're looking at a 5-year projection, and if it's reasonable to put off a full-scale upgrade or replacement to the tune of many tens of millions of dollars, say 4 or 5 years, then it doesn't have to show up in this projection, but I think we need to start putting together some 5, 10, 15, 20-year projections so we can fit some of these other longer-term projects in some kind of reasonable planning effort.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Rick, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think a lot determines on CIP, in my opinion, to get a better feel of what the town's gonna need to set the future rates accordingly.
All right.
Thank
Any changes that we'd like to make to this presentation, or do we feel that it gives us what we need right now? All right, hearing none, Tim, I'd like to ask you to work with the team on some long-term projections, maybe going out 30 years, maybe more. So we have something that's got a little bit more detail to share with the long-term capital planning group. Right now, we've just been sitting in meetings with a single number for the wastewater treatment plant. And I'd like to have a little bit more thought put into that in terms of timing and whatever else might be necessary. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much to the Weston Sampson team and to Mr. Abrahams. Good presentation, clear, understandable. And Tim, you'll get with the select board members and have a conversation with them. If you'd like one of our board members to be involved, let us know.
Sure, will do.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Ben, can I have my screen back, please?
Yes,
Thank
you can, sir.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great day,
Thank
guys.
you. Thanks for your time.
Bye.
All right, so that concludes new business item A. I'd like to go back to the agenda for old business item A, approval utility layer. Tim, last time we did not have up-to-date insurance. I see in the submittal that the insurance has been brought up to date.
Yes, yep, his insurance has been up to date. He has his proper workman's comp. Submitted letters of reference from the town of Mattapoisett as well as Fairhaven, and other references from the New Bedford Housing Authority, New Bedford Vocational, and then some private companies as well.
All right, do you have a recommendation?
I do. I recommend approving Mike Andrade Excavation LLC as the licensed utility layer in town.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I have one question. In the references here, at least in my packet, I have the town of Mattapoisett and 2 from Fairhaven.
Yes.
And we require 3, because let's see in the paperwork here, he says, there's 3 cities and towns that the applicant is currently licensed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's licensed in New Bedford, Fairhaven, and Fall River, but we don't get references from them. I don't understand that.
I'm I'm not sure if because, I guess maybe he does most of his work for New Bedford Voc and New Bedford Housing Authority rather than throughout the rest of the city. That I'm not sure.
So we require 3 references, do we not? Again, I'm not trying to,
We do.
so then, unfortunately, I can't approve it, so. I gotta be consistent, because we have regulations for a reason to follow.
So typically in the past, the board has approved with like a contingency that the drain layer come back before the board upon the next renewal. So to be consistent with that, just to let you
So
know.
has he worked in Dartmouth before?
So
And if so, then I don't have a problem with that, depending upon the inspectors, if they have any issues. But again, if he hasn't worked in Dartmouth before, then I don't want to approve a drain layer who can't even follow our procedures and protocol.
well, he hasn't worked in Dartmouth as a drain layer because he hasn't been licensed.
I get it.
Mike actually, under Andrade Excavation was, I guess, his uncle's company. And his uncle years ago worked in Dartmouth and worked in a lot of the surrounding areas. But since the nephew took over the company, he has not yet worked in Dartmouth because he hasn't been licensed.
So where would we get, or where would we expect him to get a third letter of reference?
Do I have the right packet, Tim? Because you mentioned other references, but I could have the wrong packet. I have Mattapoisett and 2 Fairhaven, so.
Yeah, and then there were the original ones that he first submitted was from John Fernandez of the New Bedford Housing Authority, Zeb Aruda from New Bedford Voc, formerly of New Bedford DPI.
So he does have 3 references, just not in my packet, is that true?
Yeah, not from the city DPW. So they might have been in last month's packet, but they may not have been in this month's packet.
But there,
He
but
had,
those,
he had additional references, the Mattapoisett and Fairhaven.
and those other references were from public agencies?
Yeah, so the New Bedford Housing Authority and then New Bedford Vocational School for utility work. And then the others were private. He had additional private.
What's your thoughts, Rob? I mean, if he has the references, I don't have a problem. That's the big ticket here.
Yeah,
We need 3 references, so.
I can re-forward the rest of the references that were in last month's packet, if you like.
But
Yeah, it seems that he's got 3 references, and Tim, if you include New Bedford Housing as, if you will, part of New Bedford, he's
I
got
would, absolutely.
3 towns or cities, so it sounds like he's covered.
I agree.
But is the New Bedford Housing Authority part of the city? Why can't he get it from the city of New Bedford? He would have to apply, he applies for his license in the city of New Bedford, not to
To the Housing Authority,
the housing
right?
authority, so.
And the reference is from the Housing Authority.
So
So, Tim, does that imply that the work was done on Housing Authority property, or what do you think's going on here?
Yes, so the one letter states. It is without reservation that I recommend Mike Andrade Excavation LLC to work on the annual New Bedford City Road and Excavation contract. I have worked successfully with Mike Andrade on excavation, asphalt, concrete projects for New Bedford Housing Authority. In all cases, I find their work to be formed with the correct equipment and experience operation. Mike Andrade Excavation has completed large and small projects with the same effort and workmanship. They are very experienced and professional with all aspects, including their necessary paperwork. I believe
What was
the New Bedford municipality, oh, so this is will be pleased, with Mike Andrade excavation extending there.
So what was that first sentence there, please? It implied the,
It is without reservation that I recommend Mike Andrade.
no, where it talks about having a license with who?
To work on the annual New Bedford City Road and excavation contract. That's
Yeah.
for New Bedford, yeah.
So, Rick, that implies he's got a permit with them or a license with them.
So then he should be able to get a reference from them, right? I can approve it subject to him getting a reference from the city of New Bedford, not the housing authority. So this doesn't have to come back in front of us. I'll leave
Okay.
that in your hands, Tim, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I
I'll
don't
work
have
on
to
that.
make, what's that?
I'll work on that.
But if he doesn't get it, then there's no license being approved, correct?
Yes.
We need 3 references, period. That's all. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Mike Andrade Excavation LLC drain layers license, or utility layer, subject to obtaining 3 letters of references from cities and towns, period. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor? Mr. Alves? Chair votes aye. All right. Next item, approval of the sewer extension permit.
Okay, last meeting, the approval of the sewer extension permit was continued to this meeting to make a decision on the cost of the permit. And we decided that we had discussed the cost of the permit originally as $100, and it was recommended by the board to increase that from $100 per the first 100 feet of extension, with an additional $1 per foot after the 100 feet. In the original packet, the extension permit didn't include that $1 per foot, so we sent a revision to include that.
All right. I have no questions. Mr. Alves?
No questions. I'll make a motion to approve the sewer extension permit.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, item C, water and sewer abatement policy.
Last meeting, the water and sewer abatement policy and application was submitted to the board, and there were recommended revisions to that, both the abatement and the application. The language regarding that it being mandatory that the property owner pay the bill in full, and and recommendation to contact the collector's office to discuss a payment plan was added to the policy. In a revision, and then in the application, it was recommended that we add the signature lines for the Board of Public Works.
All right, and those changes have been made. Do
Yes,
I
sir.
have any questions? All right, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the water and sewer abatement policy application as noted.
Motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Approved. Okay, moving to new business, item B, Pascamanset Woods Conservation Restriction.
So the Pascamanset Woods Conservation Restriction is a conservation restriction that the CPA was requiring for the use of their funding on the 196 acres that we're working on purchasing for aquifer protection land and resource protection. So I placed this on the agenda I thought that it would be approved by the state by now, but it's gone through a couple of revisions through town council, the Buzzards Bay Coalition, as well as the state. So the state's still reviewing it. So we don't have the final version yet for the board. I did send you the drafts for review. So if you have any comments or concerns, you're welcome to discuss them now, and I can make those edits and send them to the state. Other than that, once the CR gets approved by the state, I will bring it back before the board for approval.
All right, any comments or questions by board members?
I do not.
I see we've got some others in attendance. Ms. Brooks, do you have any questions on this one? All right, see no questions. All right, so you'll bring this back to us in final form for actual approval.
Correct.
Next item is the E1 pump price increase. We had a revision memo.
Yeah, so based on our last invoice from our last purchase of E1 pumps, they have increased the cost to the town. And we purchase these and we stock them, and we sell them to utility layers and residents that have to connect with these utility pumps. The inside models have increased to $5,134. We're looking at a 10% handling cost of that to a direct cost to the customer at $5,647. The standard exterior models have increased to $5,279 with a 10% handling fee. We'd like to set the direct cost of the residents at $5,807. And then the floodplain models have increased to $6,029 with a 10% handling fee, $6,632 for the resident. These increases are to be implemented immediately, since the last invoice reflected these. And these prices are still actually a little lower than you can buy from the distributor, because we buy a good number of these pumps. Yeah, we have a contract price with them.
Any questions?
So the residents purchased the pumps from the town of Dartmouth, is that correct?
They do, yes.
And the people with the E1 pumps, they're aware of this instead of going elsewhere, or no?
They are, yes.
They are?
Yep.
Do
They're aware.
we have to go with E1 pumps, or have you done your homework that this is the best out there?
Well, we set this standard was set many years ago in town based on issues with a variety of different pumps that are allowed in town. So they standardized using a consistent manufacturer, so they use E1 pumps, and we've been using them. We haven't had a ton of problems, and they seem pretty well.
So question, with the E1 pumps, do they need, and forgive me for my ignorance and for your rules and regs, I could be mistaken. Do you need 24 hours worth of storage? For backup when the pumps fail? So people still have like a day's notice to prepare themselves, or a day's worth of usage, so they can get the pump repaired or, remove and replaced?
We don't have a requirement in our specifications for that.
There
but
is none?
No, but if somebody requires more storage, there are larger pump tanks that you can buy extensions, or larger storage E1s. We just don't stock them. We just stock the standard size.
So the pumps go into their own pump chamber, or do they go into like a 1,000-gallon septic tank, depending upon the flow?
No, it's all built into the one pump chamber.
One pump by
It's an enclosed unit. It's a sealed unit.
by E1, so there's no storage for the resident at all.
No, there's storage in that tank, but not a lot. Yeah, I can get you the numbers on the standard pump chamber sizes.
Yeah, I don't believe there's much storage at all, and gives the residents any time.
I think it's 35 gallons, if I'm not mistaken, 35 to 40 gallons. They do recommend you get
Generator.
a generator hookup on it. And the reason why, when I this goes back, I've been here 26, 99, 2000, the spec was changed to go with all E1 pumps because the prior spec allowed residents to their option. And 99% of the pumps that were being installed that were not E1 failed, and the resident was left with a failed pump and a system that failed.
So,
The low pressure system was designed around a low pressure pump, which E1 is probably the better one out there. And this is set up for a one chamber type of pump. There are other one chamber type of pumps out there, and these have the same storage.
so,
Not set up on a wet well or any type. It's a one contained unit.
right, I get,
We're also set up with a generator connection that we can connect to a generator, and we can connect directly to a pump if in an emergency.
We could assist the residents if needed on that. Yep.
so I guess my main concern is, do we meet the procurement laws on this?
Yes.
We do, okay.
Well, I also hear another question, and that is, do we need or would we recommend to the town that new projects or upgraded projects have more storage built into the system, not necessarily with the pump? I mean, Rick, that's what I hear your question was, really.
For more storage, you would most likely need a septic tank, for long storage.
Yeah, well, I think the idea was to give the resident a day.
Pump chamber.
Yeah, something associated with the pump itself as opposed to a septic tank.
And with my past experience, E1, that's what E1 has their own compartments. Like you said, Paul, 35 gallons, which doesn't give
No.
any time for the residents. So again, if it's not in our regulations, then so be it, but you know,
There is the E1, like the director explained, E1 does make extended flow capacity pump, but that'd have to be in a homeowner side. We price out the basic system for a low pressure. It's not a matter of just a pump. It's a low pressure sewer system. So it has the sewer system designed for a low pressure operating pump, not just an effluent pump. They can purchase, which we can't afford to keep stocking and buying it. We purchase this standard. The homeowner and their utility could ask, we're purchasing a bigger pump, which they'll have to do on their own. Okay, we'll meet the standard. We'll still be able to connect to our system, but they have to do it on their own.
but there's nothing,
The footprint, that's the thing about this chamber, the standard chamber. It's a footprint that the homeowner has to have. A lot of these homes, like when I first started, St. John Street was a low pressure system. If you go down St. John Street, you see those apartment houses on top of each other. You might not have the footprint to put an extended base on there. With an extended chamber for extra flow. This is the option.
Give me a kiss.
So getting these pumps for the homeowners, probably about 30% cheaper. I think if a contractor's a call, they're going to be quoted $9,000 to $10,000 on these pumps. So we've done this is a courtesy that we've done for the residents since they started with the low pressure. I think Pat Nav might have been one of the first low pressure system areas that we got grants. St. John Street was actually a state grant that the state paid for the pumps and gave the homeowners, as long as they tied in by a certain amount of time, the pump was actually for free. They reimbursed the town for the pumps. But yeah, they could get extended a flow chamber, Rick. They make bigger ones on that, but you need.
it's really not, it's just dealing with capacity. When the pump fails, it's just the day storage. That's all that is.
It means that the pump fails with electric outage. That's why they recommend the generator. A pump failed, there's nothing they can do. They'll come out, put a new core in, and then fix the core on there. But you're absolutely right. It's a limited. It's 35 to 40 gallons of standard. I mean, that's the option you have to take. There's nothing else I can say on that.
As long as it's not in our regulations and we're not limited the residents to this, so.
And the residents have an option if they want to purchase a larger.
Yeah,
That's their option, absolutely.
And they're all aware of this, so
Yeah.
that's okay with me.
Yeah,
Some-
the option, we provide them with that, the cost, a cheaper cost for the standard pump, but they have the option to go if they want, if they have the capacity. I know there's a few in the system, Rick, especially up to the southern part with some of these bigger homes, they went and they had the option. Star to Sea upgraded to a low pressure system, and they all put the generator connection to it. They have a lot remote. Most of those units, I think, they went ahead and purchased the remote monitoring on it too. But we tried to provide the basic service to help them out on it.
They also offer multiple pump units, so they have dual pump units, so they have a backup pump if the pump does fail. So that's another option, and that also has more storage as well.
Yeah, that duplex system, I put one in the library at Southwood.
Yep.
And that duplex system works perfect for the library at Southwood. You can imagine the flow work there. But there's a lot of different options. We currently we were able to provide the standard unit for most of these homes here because it's just we wouldn't be able to afford having this stuff on stock, and homeowners have to make the decision on it. So we just help them along here. We give them whoever's doing this system, if they want, they talk to the homeowner, same thing. We provide the check valve, the whip, the solder up on it, and a basic 25 to 30 foot cord, which can be spliced. If the homeowner needs a longer power cord, they have to buy one from MFI Mahoney. We only provide the basic one because, like the spec is, they're very clear. You cannot splice this. So if the pump is farther away from the electrical source, they have to make arrangements to get the longer cord.
All right. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the E1 pump prices increased based on that it meets all procurement laws.
Motion by Mr. Alves, Chair seconds. Mr. Alves
Aye.
votes aye. Okay, so next item on the agenda is committee updates. I have one. Rick, do you have anything?
I do not know. Well, just, I guess we have an upcoming union meeting, correct?
Yeah, so tomorrow there's a union wage reopener that we'll be going to. We actually have a meeting to discuss the wage reopener today, this morning, and then we have the meeting tomorrow. And you know, that union meeting was originally set just to discuss the cost of living increase for the laborers union. But it's on the table, the possibility of discussing some of the other issues that we have from the reclassification.
So how about the stipends and everything that people are working out of their class? Is that gonna be discussed, and Ron's not here today, but is he scheduled to be there as well? I thought last meeting he was scheduled to be there. Is that not for him?
No, not for the union meeting, but I can discuss it with him if they want to allow him to be in that meeting as well.
Am I mistaken? I thought.
We met with the town administrator and the select person and finance director and the personnel director with my assistant director as well, with Ron.
With Ron?
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody seems to be in agreement at this stage, or are we looking for animosity here? Because people
I'll find
working
out
with us.
more on today's meeting. So this morning's meeting will let me know if they're open to discussing that in the union wage opener.
Yeah,
Hopefully they do.
yeah, after the number of discussions we've had trying to suggest and encourage the town administration to address some of these issues, I'm sure that this board would be disappointed if they don't get addressed. So I'll leave it, that's my own opinion.
I think not just the board, I think your employees that work for you will have some major issues.
Absolutely.
And just, I guess you're inviting chaos to your department, I guess, but
So we did send a working on a class form, and it got held up at the personnel director level pending this meeting. So
I got held up where? I'm sorry.
at the personnel director wouldn't sign it. She held it and pending this meeting.
So question, have you signed it? Because you're the
Absolutely, I did sign.
DPW director, so, and I'm assuming we have funding because you, last couple meetings, we had money in the budget to hire an additional personnel, so there should be no issues there, I believe.
Apparently HR is making policies.
Well, again, as long as we follow our policies, yes.
Oh.
Which, all right, so I'm gonna segue into another item. Tim, have you had, or Rick, have you had any conversation with the Charter Review Committee?
I have not, no.
And I have not.
I have not.
All right, I understand through informal communication that the Charter Review Committee intends to go to town meeting next year. I suspect it'll be in the fall. And one of the changes that they're going to recommend is to take away appointment authority from the Public Works Board for the director and place that with the town administrator. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea, but I need to find out a little bit more of what's going on and then bring it back for discussion to the board. So Tim, if you could find out anything, and I'll have a conversation with some of the select board members and see what they know.
Okay.
So if I may, I know they tried to do that in the past and was denied at town meeting. So hopefully that stays the same, because I don't approve that either, even though it seems like it's being run that way currently, but I'm not quite sure. We need to put up, or Tim needs to put his foot down and state the facts here, so.
Yeah, and I think there are a number of reasons to keep that process, clarify that process begins and ends with the Public Works Board, but all right. So
That would
maybe,
mean,
I agree.
that would mean I would resign early though, right? So that's not so bad.
Well, I think that's why back in the early 80s or late 70s is why the town went ahead and made it a chartered public works board.
Yeah.
oh yeah, it was actually earlier than that, because I wanted to know, and by the way, this is something that I think I'm gonna bring this to the board and have the board ask this question formally. Paul, the town set up the board and vested it with the responsibility of the tree warden, the highway commissioner, and the water and sewer commission somewhere in the 1950s. But the town doesn't have any idea what those authorities and responsibilities were before they were assigned. In other words, they don't know where all this stuff came from prior to the 1950s. And I think it's time we found that out, so we know, what we're doing. I've asked the question several times and I haven't gotten any kind of reasonable answer except here, go look it up, which I did. And so anyway, I'll bring this back to the board, and with that, a better understanding of what's going on with the Charter Review Committee.
Yeah, I think Mr. Almy, back early then, like the water board were actually elected members.
Yeah, I would actually believe that, because that's done in a lot of other places. So anyway, let's see what we got. Anything else from the board? Tim, do you have anything for us?
One last
Hang
thing.
on, I'm sorry, Rick.
If I may, just one other question. I'm just curious on where we stand with the process of the PE. If Sandy has been moving forward to that, or an application's been submitted to the board, or where do we stand with this?
I don't believe anything been moved forward yet.
Okay. Is there any intentions on moving forward with this, or how do we stand?
Yeah, I'll discuss that with my staff.
Was,
You bring that back to us at our next meeting?
Will do.
thank you.
Okay. Tim?
So one last thing, so Mike Arnold is retiring tomorrow. And, you know, we just want to extend our, you know, our thanks for all the work he's done here in town with us and all the knowledge that he's expressed through the years. Through that, we've been working with the personnel director as well to move forward with posting his position, and we're, you know, we're hopeful that we can get that situated within the next couple weeks. But I've spoken to Dennis Matos, is Mike's assistant currently, and asked him if he would take on the acting plant manager starting Monday, once Mike is retired.
I see Mike has something to say. Can we have you put on your screen as well?
He's on. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
I'm here. It's breaking my heart to leave tomorrow, but it's got to be done. But you guys have a great guy in Dennis Matos. Overqualified. You know, Dennis has a great background, 30 years experience with the plant. You know, he's got a environmental science degree, he's a water quality professional. And he knows all the ropes there. Like I said, he knows what's under the ground there because they built that plant around him. So, you know, you've got a ton of experience there. He's been working with me since I took over the plant as my assistant. And in my time where, you know, after I had my stroke and I was in the hospital for a very long time, Dennis ran that plant. So he's not, it's not like he hasn't done it in the interim before. So he's well qualified and well able to do things.
Is it your recommendation, if Dennis is interested in the position, obviously, he's becoming acting, I'm assuming he's going to apply for the position. Is it your recommendation for him to lead it?
For Dennis?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm sorry, the things cut out for a second there. Is it my recommendation for what?
that Dennis fulfill your position?
Oh, absolutely. I highly recommend it. He's, like I said, right now, he's capable of doing everything. And for the past week, you know, we've gone over just about everything. And, you know, like I said, he's capable of taking the job and running with it right now.
Right. That's probably as good a recommendation as we're going to get.
So one other thing, we've asked the personnel director, and we spoke with Mike and Dennis, that we, you know, if we can keep Mike around for kind of this transferable period, with Dennis making that move, you know, with the permitting and with a few projects, maybe like 1 day a week, to help him, you know, transform over to the plant manager position. We're also looking to change the title of that position to the superintendent. So years ago, the former director had retitled all the division heads as superintendents, but the wastewater treatment plant manager at that time didn't want to change his title to superintendent, so it's been plant manager, but, so we're looking to change that title to superintendent to be equitable among all the division heads in the DPW.
So that needs approval through,
Through the union and through the personnel director
so
and
that,
and the town administrator. And the board.
so does that entail changing the description of the job title and everything?
Yeah, so it's the job title change, and then there's, we worked on a few changes, just some updates in the job description. So one of them, one of the job description, changes was the upgrade of personnel, that they oversee. So there's more personnel than there were many years ago, so we had to update that as well.
I would like to ask if Mike would be willing to oversee that, just to make sure things are according to, he's got multi-years experience, so nobody knows more than him based off of that, so HR can change all the HR stuff and really doesn't have any clue of what wastewater treatment does. So I think Mike is valuable in changing, with all due respect,
Yep.
changing any type of job description besides the title.
And actually, we've been working with Mike and Sandy and Dennis on these updates to the job description. So we 100%. And then we take those, we're taking those and we've presented them to the personnel director rather than having them try to make changes on
So
something
we're
that they
doing
don't
it?
have expertise in. Correct. We're doing it. We're
Okay.
making the changes.
Tim, can I suggest you bring that description back to us as soon as possible when you guys are completely satisfied with it? I'd like the board to affirm formally that particular job description so that we've got a little bit of history as to the department level approval and the board level approval.
And I would like Mike's approval as well. And if he doesn't mind, I know he's retiring tomorrow, but if he's coming aboard once a week to help out, that's awesome. I appreciate it and wish you all the best in your future, Michael.
Thanks, Rick.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. It has been a pleasure working with you guys. And, I mentioned to Tim, we had planned on I had planned on retiring in October. Unfortunately, my health has moved that date up, but we have a lot of projects planned for the summer, spring and summer, and our original schedule of training and things of that nature was through the summer. So me bailing early kind of put a lot of pressure on Dennis. So I offered to stick around if they needed me for a day a week, or if there's something big up, I could do a little more. But I really don't want to work a lot. I've worked years plus for this retirement date. You know what I mean?
Well, all I can say, Mike, is be careful when you retire because they stop paying you, even though sometimes you work just as much.
I'll remember that.
Remember that. All right. So a couple of things, Tim. Again, bring the project description back, and any other position descriptions that relate to it that you want to update. Bring those back to the board, please. And if you could let Mike know when we will consider them. I'd like to have Mike on the record giving some testimony and support. All right.
Absolutely.
So that shows up in the minutes.
Sure.
All right. Anything else for us?
Not for now, but I will update you once I meet today with the town administrator and the personnel director on the meeting, on the wage opener and the union negotiations starting tomorrow.
Yes, if you would, please. And I also see a 1 o'clock meeting today. All right.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right. Excellent.
All right. Anything else?
That's it for today.
All right. Thank you all for attending, Mike. I hope I'll see you again soon. And
Floating around.
all right. maybe today if I come over, right?
Maybe
Maybe. All right. That's as good as I can ask right
Come and
now.
pay a visit.
to show you our new equipment in the lab.
Yeah, well, that not only that would be good, but just to see you and shake your hand and tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for us. Anyway, thank you all. And I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A motion by Mr. Alves, second by the chair. All in favor, Mr. Alves?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.